And welcome everyone to another exciting journey on Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and today's guest is quite a unique guest because he actually, in full transparency, watched another episode of mine and saw that I was interested in a topic and approached me to bring that topic onto the show, which I have to say I was very excited and flattered as well to be approached that way. And so I am so grateful and honored to have him on as a guest today. And so I am going to turn it over to the one, the only historian, informational researcher extraordinaire, Tyrone Ellington.
Hey, what's going on, Michael? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Yeah, I like that introduction. That was good. I'm gonna have to steal that from you.
Yeah, go ahead. You earned it.
Yeah. Like you were saying, I watched your other video and seen the topics that you were interested in, and I felt like I had enough knowledge and a lot of experience and time in it to present that information. I don't really present too many PowerPoint slides or slides or in that factor or anything like that, because I used to be in the military and that's all we used to do. But now, I felt like this is something. I've been to a lot of conventions and conferences and stuff like that, and I've seen people present them there, and I was like, that's something that might catch people's eyes. Presentation brings a lot of things, and when it's time to share knowledge, it depends on how you present your stuff. You can talk about it, you can show about it, or you can just sit there and just dilly dally about it. And a lot of people, seem to go only halfway with their research, but I like to go to full fledged force of trying to figure out the origins of these stories, not just what somebody told me, even though all my information comes from books and reading articles and peer reviewed articles and stuff like that. It's I want to see where the origins come from. And usually that comes with some type of dating system. So yeah, that's how I like to do my research, basically just getting the origins.
Well, and I'd also like to recognize, as you said, being a service member. My dad was in the Navy, so from my heart to you, thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. I know a lot of people don't think of it as a sacrifice, but there is a lot of things that get sacrificed in serving the country, so thank you for that.
It was an honor, and that's the reason why I brought that up is because that's what started me on my journey of this whole thing. I was in the military. I got wounded in combat. I had to get medically retired. When I was wounded in Afghanistan and I got forced to retire, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I only knew the military, and I started saying, well, I see a lot of people on social media sharing things, but they're also sharing things and asking a question at the same time. So they're saying, for instance, did the Anunnaki come from planet Nibiru? And then in the same breath, they'll say they did come from planet Nibiru. So my thing is where does it in the text does it say that for me to be able to, repeat that same comment, right? So I seen people talk about this stuff in social media videos and stuff like that, and I was like, yo, I actually read the sources. Like I've actually read where these actual texts come from, and I can see where some people are picking and choosing who they go off of. Like when people talk about Planet Nibiru, I know for a fact it all comes from Zachariah Sitchin because he was the only one that actually talked about that starting in 1976. Now, when you talk about academia, then that's when you go into everybody's translation, and then everybody has their own translation, but they're probably close to similar. Maybe you can just say, okay, the wording may be different, stop playing with semantics and stuff like that. But then that's when you can get to, okay, where's the actual source for yourself? Like the cuneiform tablets, for instance. And that's when I learned that there's actually cuneiform tablets available for anybody to read for themselves. I mean, all you have to do is just take the time to learn the language and translate it yourself. And that's really about it. But they have the tablets available. So that was more like I've seen people just talk, but I wanted to see. I wanted to see where this information was really at. And that's when I started my website, rebirthoftheword.com. Started with one article. It was about the Sumerians, who most people consider the first civilization. And then even though there's a whole array of different things on which you can consider a civilization can mean different things to different people. I mean, Margaret Mead had a definition meaning that somebody with a femur, their bone was healed, and that's when she considers the beginning of civilization. Some people will say it started off with, pottery or agriculture or something like that. So everybody has their different thing. But I went off of Oxford University because they actually have a place where you can go see the tablets for yourself online, and they have the translations available for everybody online to see. So when I say Zachariah Sitchin, I say, well, where does in Zachariah Sitchin in his books say where this information is at? And he doesn't specifically give you cuneiform tablets or so on and so forth. And I'll go over that in the PowerPoint slide if you want to bring that up now. I have, like I said, a whole PowerPoint slide that I felt like that came with a whole bunch of answers that some people were looking for. So like, I'll give you an example. Most people, when they look at Sumer, they see it as a city or a place or something like that, or multiple places, depending on what text you may read. It can get really picky about this type of stuff, but most people know what Sumer is. But when you read the Bible, you hear the word Shinar or read the word Shinar, Shinar, and Sumer and Shinar is one and the same thing. So it lets me know that the connection in the beginning stages of the origins of all this stuff that goes on, there's a connection between the Holy Bible, depending on which version you read, the KJV or New International Version or whatever, to the Mesopotamian text. So I wanted to make sure that I started where all this started at. The Anunnaki, religion, Abraham, Elohim, so on and so forth. I wanted to start where it's, where the origins of these stories came from. So that's why I picked this location, because that's where it starts. Whether you're reading the Holy Bible or whether you're reading the Sumerian or Akkadian text, it all starts in this general area. And that's why, for me personally, when I brought up Zachariah Sitchin, most people know who he is because of the Planet Nibiru idea. Most people know who David Icke is. Most people know who Giorgio Tsoukalos is, Graham Hancock, and Anton Parks are. Maybe not too much of Anton Parks as much as the others, but the other four, you definitely can tell that people know about them. I mean, we all have heard about them. Zachariah Sitchin with his books, David Icke and the Reptilians, and so on and so forth. You got Giorgio Tsoukalos from the Ancient Alien show. And then you got Graham Hancock, who pretty much opened up a lot of eyes for and ideas within people to wonder about these older civilizations. Now, the people that most people don't know about, unless they're following, the academic side and Zachariah Sitchin side, which I would say Zachariah Sitchin side, because a lot of people follow under him. He is the guy when it comes to the alt history type of the Anunnaki, or Anuna, I should say. But most people don't know who Samuel Noah Kramer is, Thorgil Jacobson, John Batterio, Jeremy Black, or Michael S. Heiser. Dr. Michael S. Heiser actually created a website called Sitchin is Wrong. So he tells you, right off the bat that he wasn't playing any games. And I have to say this admittedly, you have to be really upset at somebody passing some bad information for you to make a whole website called Sitchin is Wrong. Now, this is a funny story on how I found this website. I've read so much about Zachariah Sitchin. His book's been out. His first book, The 12th Planet, came out in 1976. It was a whole bunch of information that he shared through his many books that he has, and even through his unpublished works that his niece actually published on behalf of him. But so most people know who Zachariah Sitchin and his ideas are. Well, Samuel Noah Kramer wrote these books, I believe, in 1956. It was the 39th verse of Sumerian history, and it's basically a book about the inventions that the Sumerians may have came up with first. Now, this was back, I believe, in 1956. But the point is that you have two people who go against what each other say. So Samuel Noah Kramer, Zachariah Sitchin, who would you fall under? Well, Samuel Noah Kramer actually used cuneiform tablets, from what I understand, because he actually tells you these tablets in his books, unlike Zachariah Sitchin. So I found Dr. Michael S. Heiser's website because I was trying to find out how wrong Sitchin was. So what I typed in Google was, I just made it very simple. Sitchin is wrong. Didn't know about the website or anything like that. I just wanted to see what websites would come up that would, you know, basically show that idea of Sitchin being wrong. And that's how I found Dr. Michael S. Heiser's book, website. And he has other websites too, but he specifically made this website because he was mad at Sitchin's information. Most people don't know who George Smith is, or Andrew George, or Irving Finkel is. Those individuals, they have books out there that share, who Gilgamesh is and who all these different individuals are, and it talks about who the Anunnaki and so on and so forth. But one of my favorite sources, because it's free or you can pay for it, I made sure that I grabbed the screenshot of it, and it's the Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature. Now, this website is available for everybody that has internet. Anybody can look on there. And this website is basically the website that tells you everything that is supposed to be said about the tablets, about the Anuna / the Anunnaki. I mean, everything from them creating humans to Gilgamesh and so on and so forth. It has everything that you possibly can think of. Now, what's interesting about this is that, and it says it in here on this website, and you probably can't see it, but it says the corpus contains Sumerian texts and transliteration, English prose translations, and bibliography information for each composition. The transliterations and the translations can be searched, borrowed, browsed, and read online using the tools of this website. So this website allows you to do this. But what's also interesting about this is that the Sumerian is the first language for which we have written evidence, and it is literature the earliest known. The Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature, ETCSL, a project of the University of Oxford. Remember, I said that's why I took Oxford's definition, because they have the definition that goes with their idea of the Anuna / Anunnaki. It comprises a selection of nearly 400 literary compositions recorded on sources which come from the ancient Mesopotamian, modern day Iraq, and date to the 3rd and early 2nd millennium BCE. So that's just about the time frame they have it. Now, this is the website itself. Now, what's interesting about this website is you can also look on the right-hand side where I have Mr. Burns on, because I like to watch The Simpsons while I'm reading. That's the book. It's literally called The Literature of Ancient Sumer. Now, the book and the website is literally the same thing. There's more stuff on the website, of course, because you have different links that you can go to different places for more information and so on and so forth. But this book literally tells you exactly what the website tells you when it talks about the Anuna and the creation stories and all that. And you see those little pink tabs on there. So every book that I own has somewhat of what those tabs look like. And that's basically things that I found interesting, things that I'm reading, that I'm seeing from people in different interviews, watching YouTube videos, documentaries, social media. It doesn't matter. I hear people say it. I remember reading about it, and then I tab it up, and then I go over it on my own YouTube channel. Of course, I have my own YouTube channel, and I have a playlist that's actually called What I've Learned from Reading These Books. And I've done all the Zecharia Sitchin's books on that. And on these tabs is everything that I've personally found interesting. It's not something that's saying that it's facts or fiction or anything, but it's for me to bring up. So this is the individuals that I was talking about, Samuel Noah Kramer all the way down to Irving Finkel. And these are what their titles were basically as, is when you go on the on the internet and look at them. Samuel Noah Kramer was an Assyriologist and Sumerologist. And it just goes on like that. So when you look at Zecharia Sitchin, it says author of the 12 planets along with other works. And mostly they have him as an alt guy. And it just talks about the different individuals. And I made sure to put these names on there. These names on there is because these are the names that most people should be familiar with. And the reason why I say most people should be familiar with is because when you talk about Samuel Noah Kramer, he has many books that talks about the Anuna / Anunnaki, and Michael S. Heiser does the same thing. If you want to go to the idea of planet Nibiru and an Anunnaki coming from a different planet that orbits our sun every 3,600 years, the top guy and only guy that you ever have to learn about from this is Zecharia Sitchin, because he's the one that got that ball rolling. Everybody else that follows the ancient alien theories, they got their information from Zecharia Sitchin. So I made sure to bring that information. Now, another website that I like is called the Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative. It's CDLI. And it's basically when I was telling you earlier about how when it comes up to looking at the cuneiform tablets for yourself, this is one of the locations that you can do that at. It tells you, like I typed in here, this is the Gilgamesh tablet. It tells you what it looks like. It'll bring it up in different ways that you can look at it, and it tells you what it says on there in some description of some manner of some sort like that. And most of the people that know about the Gilgamesh story, this one is from Neo-Assyrian, which is dated around 911 to 612 BC. Okay, so that's nowhere near, the second millennium, third millennium BC that we know of when it comes to the text. But this is the cuneiform that talks about it. Now, with this cuneiform, you can see how it's kind of deteriorated and broken. Half the message is off, and it's broken in between places. And that's where people have to understand that's where other people fill in the gap with their information on what they believe and what they think. And it's not because they have the knowledge of what is supposedly said, because if I tear up a piece of paper and gave you half that piece of paper, you won't know what that other half is unless I actually showed you and told you what it is. And it's the same thing with this. We don't have the actual other half of it, so we can only make an assumption, or anybody that's translating it can only make an assumption. I say these sources are important because, like I said, I was talking about the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, which they date, anywhere from 2300 BC to 1700 BC on there for the text. Now, the book itself has a different time frame. It says 1800 to 1800. It starts around 1800 BC, and that's on the back of the book. It's like 1800 BCE, somewhere around there. And I put -1701 in there because you could find different sources that say things, but on the back of the book itself, it does say 1800 BC. So to me, that's very interesting, because the book has a different date than what it says on the website. Now, like I said, the website and the book are nearly identical, two same things. It's made by the same authors and everything. It's the same people that was involved. It's just the dates are a little off. So I want to talk about the cuneiform writing system. So with the cuneiform writing system, a lot of people believe that the Sumerians are considered the first civilization because of the simple fact of their writing system. And it developed around 3200 BC in southern Mesopotamia. I know that because I took a class from Bar Ilan University from Dr. Nili Salman, and that's what she says in her class. And since she says that, and I still have my notes right here from that class, I decided to put that date in there because that's the date that I got. Now, I'm not saying this is facts and this is the absolute date or nothing like that. What I'm saying is that I took a class on this subject, and this is the date that she presented in her class. So that's the date that I wrote down, and that's easier for me to remember. Of course, I know that it's plus or minus, but like I said, that's just the date that I got from the class. The Sumerian cuneiform was written, or the pictographic script, I should say, was written because of this, or started because of the simple fact for trading, economic uses. It didn't have anything to do with the Anunnaki or Nuna or anything like that. It was so they can trade with somebody else. Now, I always said this. If the Sumerians are considered the first civilization because of their writing system, then that means that somebody else on the other side had to have a writing system so that way they can communicate to each other. And that would be the Akkadians, right? That would only make sense, right? But like I said, a lot of people consider Sumerians the first civilization because of their writing system. But the earliest examples of it, like I said, was pictographic script. It's basically just for trade, for rations, for livestock, tax receipts. It didn't matter. And it was just for a tool for commerce, administration, right? Then you had the evolution of Sumerian writing. It gradually became fully developed language capable of expressing complex ideas. That just makes sense. When you start a writing system, it's only going to get better and develop better. That's why we speak English today, because it changed over time, and now some of us are speaking English and others people are still speaking other languages. Then this as it got more developed, of course, it went into more things. It went into more of just not trade or legal matters, but religious texts, hymns, myths, and temple rituals, right? Because somebody decided to say, hey, we need to be able to keep this information just in case something happens to the person that has it. We no longer have to worry about relying on mouth to ear type thing. We can rely on just reading it and having something, as a recorded device. Then it transitioned to Akkadian, which Akkadian was taken over by Sargon of Akkad. It's a Semitic language, and it adopted the Sumerian cuneiform script. Like I said, two people had to have the same type of writing system or close or similar ideas of a writing system to be able to communicate to trade. Well, because the Akkadians came after the Sumerians, it only makes sense that the Sumerians and Akkadians were working with each other simultaneously to come up with a writing system for their trades and so on and so forth. But the Akkadians adapted more of the religious aspects as far as with the Sumerians and what they thought about the Anuna / Anunnaki. Now, I'm not saying the Akkadians had the idea of the Anuna / Anunnaki by themselves. What I'm saying is that the Sumerians and the Akkadians were at one time telling this in a traditional oral story, and later on it needed to be recorded. And that's when the Akkadians and their writing system, even though they adapted the cuneiform Sumerian script, their narratives was mostly about, cosmology and religious and stuff like that. And they produced most of the famous works, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh. And some people even consider the Enuma Elish, but I would say that Enuma Elish is more Babylonian, but there's a whole mixture with that. So I'll get into that. A lot of these stories, the Epic of Gilgamesh and Enuma Elish, a lot of people say that it came from traditional oral stories, which basically started with the Sumerians. Well, I did an episode on the Ubadians. And the Ubadians are a group of individuals that came before the Sumerians. They are the ones who inhabited the land of Sumer before the Sumerians. And they have a lot of their pictographic script in there too. And they also have clay pottery and so on and so forth. So now when it comes into the Sumerians being the first civilization because writing or clays or whatever the case may be, that's some of what Samuel Noah Kramer said, that can be placed on the Ubadians. But because of the information is so iffy sometimes, and some people push dates here or there, it all just depends on what you want to believe in. But the most part is that I like to say, instead of the Sumerians, the Mesopotamians, because the Mesopotamians are a group of individuals who work together to get established to where they are at now. So like I said, the Sumerian writing system started because of trade and later came into religion. The Akkadian writing system inherited the system, placed stronger emphasis on the mythology and theology. The earliest known use of the word Sumerologist goes around 1880. I have a book from the Ancient Alien Show. Their first book is off their first episode, and it's basically what Eric von Daniken theorized and so on and so forth, and it had different ideas. It's literally almost the first episode, just written in book format with minus some things that they took out. I want to say in the book, and I can't remember who said it exactly, but they said Samuel Noah Kramer is where we get the word Sumerologist. And I only put this in here because it actually goes back to the 1880s. So I wanted to show that, in just out of respect to the word itself, that the word Sumerologist didn't start with Samuel Noah Kramer. It started before. And I already talked about the Sumerians being first of the civilization because of the writing system. Some of the earliest tablets go back 3200 BC, but I've read that they go back further than that. It's so funny that a lot of times when you read this information online, or you try to fact check, I guess you can say, certain things, you will always find something with a much, older date than what is described. And it's almost, to me, juggling, should you put dates out there at this time frame in this lifetime, right? Because these dates change a lot. And it's out of respect for that. I try to just stay in the realm of what I've read personally through books. On my X account, I share all the books that I have. Like I said, on my YouTube channel, I have a playlist called, what I've learned from reading these books. And I take everything, and I also go on my social media and I share what's inside those books also. So it's not just videos, it's also, in a reading format.
Tyrone.
Yeah, what's up?
I'm curious, when it comes to the dates, I've started to question, like, is 3200 BC really 3200 BC? Because we had a lunar calendar, then we had a Julian calendar, then a Gregorian calendar. And so we've had all these calendar changes, the amount of days change, the year, time frame of a year changes. So how accurate can we be in saying, hey, 3200 BC is really 3200 BC and not, it could be like 10,000 BC in the old
Mhm.
calendar system.
Yep, I actually have a another presentation. I might be able to bring it up. Just one. It's just one slide that actually talks about how the time frame of the gods were in thousands versus what it is in humans. I actually did broke that down to find that information out. But you're right. I always said the same thing too. When people give dates, it's almost like they're giving specific dates, not specific enough to where it says 3203 or 3204, but they say 3200 BC, they say 3100 BC, 5400 BC. And just like you said, we've had different calendars, right? Um, who's to say that humans at one time didn't consider a full day actually 2 days, because they thought a night was a day, and daytime was a day, right? Like, I mean, that would add, double of what you would know, right? So yeah, I agree with you. That's why I said I don't really feel like, saying these numbers out comfortably, because a lot of times people will see these numbers and they'll go see something else and they'll be like, yeah, I told you there was something earlier. And I totally agree with that. I'm just going off of what the masses say, what most people will, if you type it in ChatGPT or Grok, or if you go to, Google or any of those other DuckDuckGos and you search it, you're going to find this information in here. But I always challenge people to say, look, these dates, I don't agree. I don't personally agree with these dates, especially when it comes to the first civilization of the Sumerians. I don't agree, and I don't say that they're the first civilization, because my first question is, what is the criteria needed to be considered a civilization? And once we figure that out, then we'll be able to place every, group of people around the world and see if they fit that criteria. But then we also have to wait till the water goes away a little bit, because a lot of our civilizations are underwater right now. So that tells me that they're much older than what I'm considering as 3200 BC. So I totally agree with you on that. That date stuff, it really does get people uh, really riled up, especially if they don't see a date that they agree with. Right? I agree with you on that.
And that could also go into why, like, Noah is said to be 900 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
we're lucky to make 100 years. Could it be because of the calendar change and the structure of the year change that we're actually the same age? It just is different on the conversion of the calendars.
Yep. Yep. When I'm done with this slide presentation, I'll see if I can find the actual link that I have for that. I like I said, I did a specific, because everybody heard about the Sumerian king list, and
Right.
the Sumerian list would tell you that these kings or these gods or whoever were thousands and thousands of years of age, but they were literally, if you convert it the right way correctly, in which I'm not even good in math, so I don't even know how I came up with this, and none of these mathematicians came up with it, because I actually plugged it into Chat GPT and Grok and all that, and to see if it could do the math part for me, and it said, hey, this checks out. So I actually have a presentation that actually said that. I shared it plenty of times in the past. It's just interesting to me because, uh, you know, we read myths and then we want to believe in these myths, but we fail to realize that these myths could be exaggerated. It's like the telephone game that some people call it. I line up 10 people in the line, and, I tell one person one thing. By the time he gets to the 10th person, it's going to be a totally different story.
Yeah.
So,
I love using that example too myself.
yeah. So, back to the slide. The Sumerians are usually known as the black-headed people. Sagigog is, I'm not sure if I said that right, but it's Saggiga, and it has a name in there, and it's often meaning all humans, mankind. In some cases that I've learned, which is interesting, is that they mean brothers. So instead of being considered black-headed people, they were considered brothers. Well, that goes into what I know about Freemasonry. Could Freemasonry have started here because they were considered brothers? Is this the first idea? Who knows? I just know that I was reading a book one time. I can't remember which one it was at the time, but I put this in there because I thought it was very interesting. And we know that the Sumerians was a polytheistic group of individuals, worshipers. They worshiped many gods known as the Anuna. Now we call them today the Anunnaki. It wasn't until the Akkadian period that the word Anunnaki came into existence. So when the Sumerians called them, those guys, their name, it was called the Anuna. When the Akkadians came around, it switched to to Anunnaki. So, and each city-state had their own god. So, it could have been, from Enlil to Enki to Shamash. The Anuna, also called the Anunnaki, were a group of major deities in Sumerian religion. They consisted anywhere from 7 to 12 main deities, sometimes less than that, sometimes more than that. It just depended on the text. But overall, for the sake of what most texts and translators say, it's between 7 and 12. They were believed to be the descendants of the god Anu, that's his sign right there where you can see where it's the star. Or An. I like to say Anu because An is just, you can mix that with a different word, but Anu. And they're often described as judges and controllers of human fate. That's why basically a lot of people consider them the Elohim. Like when I was saying that each city-state worshiped specific gods, some people would consider these different gods to be the Elohim when you go to the biblical text. Their stories influenced many Mesopotamian cultures. You can see them in Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian, not just Mesopotamian, but you can see them in Hittites. You can see some of them in Egyptian texts. Matter of fact, in Egypt, they found texts that was related to Anu. So that's very interesting. And for the most part, like I was telling you about that website, the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. If you type Anunnaki in that website, nothing will come up. But if you type in Anuna, that's when things start showing up. So with that website, the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, you have to be precise on what words were used at what time. So you can't use an Akkadian Babylonian word for a Sumerian search engine. There, you have to use the Sumerian word or deity or name or what have you. And another source that I like is the Oxford Handbook of Cuneiform Culture. This is the book that tells you what it basically breaks down everything for you Barney style about the Anuna / the Anunnaki, everything that you can possibly think of. It gives you more information. It tells you tells you who the Anunnaki were, who the Apkallu were, and so on and so forth. And I give you a good example of these sources that I use.
Real quick though, if you go back one slide, one thing that I find interesting is they say they're descendant of the god Anu, if you use that spelling. The Egyptians, they're descendants of the god An-Mun. It's like the same spelling, except they put an M at the end. So, is that like, could you argue they're talking about the same god? They just added a letter to make it more Egyptian than Sumerian or Akkadian?
That's an interesting question because I thought about that stuff too. So Anu is supposed to be the top dog. He's supposed to be the god of all of them, right? But see, this is where a lot of people don't remember or they don't take in consideration is that it was a guy named Elelu that was in charge first. And Elelu and Anu got into a fight. And then Anu won, and then Elelu had to leave and go somewhere else. Some people say he had to leave planet Nibiru. Some people just say he had to leave the land. But the point is that he left, and Anu is the one in charge. So when people say the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru, it makes me wonder, because the Anunnaki didn't come from a planet Nibiru per se, as far as what the texts say, and they don't necessarily come from Anu either. They come from whoever these gods were, and that's where I'm about to get into, which is very interesting that you brought that up, because it's very, the Anunnaki seem to be the individuals who are the top gods. That's what everybody believes. There's the Elohim, they're all that.
And what's also interesting is, like you were saying with An and the other god, I'm not familiar enough with the name to recall it. But then you also have Enki and Enlil. So it's like, it seems to be like a pattern where every so often the gods go after each other and fight each other.
Exactly. And that's why it brings me up to this slide, which is very interesting. The reason why I brought up that other book and now I'm bringing up this book is because what I like to do is I like to read everything in the book. So like I said, the Anuna, or the Anunnaki, I should say, are credited for the creation of the universe and everything within it. Depending on whether it was the Sumerians or the Babylonians, the myths about them were found throughout Mesopotamia, especially the Keto Festival. The Keto Festival is basically a festival that was used during a certain time. Do you know anything about the Keto Festival before I start?
To be honest, it's like, it almost feels like it's a Japanese term. And for some reason my mind is going there, so I don't think I'm on the same page as you are.
No, so, and I'm glad you said that, because so you heard about the Enuma Elish, right? The story that, okay, so the Enuma Elish is Babylonian. Like I said earlier, a lot of people would contribute it to the Sumerians because it was translated from, traditional oral stories from myths to being recorded on tablets. But the Keto Festival is basically a festival that they had at that time frame that told the story of the creation of the gods, the planet, humans, and so on and so forth. It's called the Enuma Elish is literally called the seven creation story tablets. There's many different ways that they call it, but it was basically just like any ceremony or get together that told these stories. So it was told at a certain point of time frame. I've read so many different dates. It was usually in the summertime. Sometimes some people said they did it in the fall and winter, depending on what city state they were in, right? Everybody had their own way of doing things, basically. But the point was, the Keto Festival was the Enuma Elish, and is basically the festival that shows in movie format that I could keep it basic style. It was the movie style of the Enuma Elish. So they would do dancing and singing and so on and so forth. But this is what's interesting. The Anunnaki gods were known for creating a substitute to help relieve the Igigi of toiling the earth. Now, this is where it gets to the part where it gets confusing. When you open up the book, The Literature of Ancient Sumer, which you can see, you go to the back of it, it literally says the Igigi, or Igigi, I've heard it named different ways, was a collective name for the great gods. Okay, I'm going to say that again. A collective name for the great gods. When you look in back for the Nuna, which is also known as the Anunnaki, it is a collective name for the gods. So think about that for a second. Your whole time
like the Greeks have the major gods, and then they have the other gods underneath them. So that's
exactly
how I'm it.
But this is the thing. Most people would tell you that the Anuna were the great gods. They were the gods that told everybody what to do. They were the gods that were in charge. But when I open up this book and I see that the Igigi or Igigi are the great gods, that means that the Anuna / the Anunnaki came under the Igigi. Now, this is what's interesting about the Igigi, and I'll go into it in a little bit more about them, is that These individuals are considered the ones who are the 7 dots or the 7 stars. Some people will consider what we know them as the Pleiades system.
Right.
Now that's
I was
interesting.
thinking that because the
Yeah.
7 sisters.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just interesting that these individuals are known for being outside of Earth's atmosphere. The Igigi Ijidzi are known for that. That's what they are known for as far as depictions and what some people would say as far as translations. Now, this is what's interesting. In early Mesopotamian cosmology, the Anunnaki were seen as the first generation of gods created by the primordial deities and sky or heaven, father of gods, and Kai or Ki, earth, land, or ground. Now, that's just only some text, because like I said, when you read the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature or the book version and literature of ancient Sumer, you get that Gigi were the first generation gods because they're the main ones. Now, this is where, for the next slide, this is where you get most of. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say the Ki is also in some cultures pronounced the chi, which is the energy of the body, and they say we're connected to the planet, and so that would make sense if the chi is the earth, land, or ground. That would make sense how it's connected to us.
Exactly. See, you get it. Yeah, and you can see how there's similarities through other places around the world that goes with this, right? But the thing is that the words don't match up. So that's where people get hung up on, is the words. You're not using the same words that I'm using, so I'm not going to believe what you say. But they forget that even in the Bible itself, it says that God, confused language. And with that happening, that confused us.
The Tower of Babel story.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So the next slide is basically just 4 individuals that are mostly talked about when you read the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature or the book, is Anu, Enki, Enlil, and Ninhursag, or Ninhursaga. There's so many different ways that they have some of these names. But Anu was the supreme god. Enki was supposed to be the god of water and creation. Enlil, air and authority. Some people even say that he took over and became the main god, and then Marduk came later or whatnot. Then you got Ninhursaga, the fertility goddess. But these 4 individuals are only mentioned depending on who's translating the text. I've read books that these aren't always the number one or the 4 number individuals that are spoken about. There's different groups who are spoken about depending on the city state. It's very hard to go ahead.
I was just gonna say real quick is, if we look at this story in terms of Greek, that people may understand it easier, is so On and Nihirsag would be like the Titans, where Enki and Enlil are the gods. And since Enlil is thought to have taken over, that would make him the equivalency of Zeus. Am I correct?
Yeah, and the perfect example, like you just said on the top, I didn't even read it yet, was the term means of Anunnaki. Some people would say those who came from heaven to earth, or the Zachariah Sitchin idea, which is incorrect because the term means those of royal blood or princely offspring, referencing the divine status. And they are not a fixed pantheon like Greek or Norse mythology. Instead, Anunnaki refer to a class of deities, like how you was saying, like the Titans and so on and so forth. Sometimes the major gods, sometimes the underworld gods, and depending on the text and era, it could have been anything. So just like you said, like it was a class. Like even in the Bible, if you read the class of the Nephilim and the giants and the fallen angels, those are all a class of what some people would say as deities, lower gods, right? Even though they're a lower god, they're still a god.
And
so
And what's also interesting is you hear, like, when people talk about the cabal or the deep state or, shadow government, whatever name you want to give it, the one thing that always they'll say is their bloodline. They are bloodline driven. And so it's interesting that they are sometimes akin to being said, oh, they're like the Anunnaki. And if Anunnaki is those of royal blood, that would make sense why these people are so fixated on the bloodline and not like, oh, we need to go get this temple or we need to go get this book. They're not worried
Mm-hmm.
about that. They're worried about the blood.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And that's why blood has played a major part in every single religion. Every single religion. When I was talking about, and you can see right here on the tabs that I have of this book, this is the Anunnaki Chronicles that was edited by his niece, Janet Sitchin. And she actually published, uh, information after he passed away. So what's interesting about this book is when I talked about this is in his book, The Earth Chronicle, or her book, The Earth Chronicles, what Zachariah Sitchin says. He says the Hebrew original named them Nephilim. The teacher explained it meant giants, but I objected, didn't it mean literally those who were cast down, who had descended to earth. Now remember that part, those who were cast down. And it's important because he's telling you at a young man's age, or a young child's age, I should say. I'm thinking he's probably, maybe, I don't know how old you would be. You go to Sunday school or whatnot. But he said in Sunday school, or his version of Sunday school, was that he was going back and forth with the teacher on what the Nephilim means. Now, if you go to the Strong's Concordance, which anybody has translated the Hebrew/Aramaic text from the Bible to the Septuagint, when you look at the Strong's Concordance, Nephilim does mean giants. So for him to say that was to let me know that he didn't understand what Hebrew meant. And that just makes sense because he was a kid. Maybe he just had this in his notes and his niece took this and put it in the book, which I think this book here itself, this book right here, does more harm for him than anything. And I don't think she realizes that. Because like I said, the Strong Concordance would tell you what exactly Nephilim means. Now, I didn't remember when I said those who were cast down. In the same book, he says those who were descended to earth. But young Sitchin raised his hand and asked the teacher, why did you say giants when the word Nephilim means in Hebrew those who came or descended to earth? Then you can read again in another one, those who from heaven to earth came. The exact meaning of the Hebrew term Nephilim that the Bible used, right? This is what he wrote. So you have 3 different versions in that one book that he comes up with. And people will say these 3 different versions plus others because they're adding and taking away words. But like I said, when you go to the Strong's Concordance, which you can see on the right-hand side, number 5303, Nephilim, it literally means KJV. You can see where it says giant. Right. Or it means fall. The origin of the word means fall, but it does in KJV means giant. Fall and giant is literally what is talked about. And this is the Strong's Concordance. And this doesn't change anything at all. What I mean is that Zachariah Sitchin can't take his interpretations and change what the Strong's Concordance is, because the whole reason why we have the Strong's Concordance is so we can translate the words that we have from Aramaic to Hebrew to the Greek language. And this is what everybody uses.
Yeah, and so one question I want to ask as we're going along that I'm sure a lot of people are asking themselves, where do you stand on the Nibiru is planet X talk? Is planet X the same as Nibiru? Is it the 10th planet, or do you find in your readings we're talking about different planets?
I'm glad you said that, because this is the next slide. This is where we get into the nitty gritty. So Planet X and Nibiru, from what I understand, are 2 different things. Planet Nibiru is supposed to be a planet that orbits our sun every 3,600 years, and that comes from a theory presented by Zachariah Sitchin. He says this because this cylinder seal VA243 right here, where you can see the arrow that points to it, he says this is considered why they say there's 13 planets out there, or 12 planets out there. And I can tell you, when you read his book, The 12th Planet, we know the sun and the moon is not a planet. So it shouldn't have been called the 12th planet. And Nibiru can't be the number that it's in, because some people say Planet X or whatnot, because it's supposed to be the 10th planet if you take away the sun and the moon, or whatever the case may be. There is nothing in the actual text that says that planet Nibiru orbits our sun every 3,600 years. So you remember that website that I spoke about with Michael S. Heiser, Sitchin is wrong. So this is cylinder seal VA243. And this is him breaking down what the cuneiform writing system says on there. Now, I always say this. Cylinder seal VA243 has more to do with German than it does with Planet Nibiru. Because when you look where it says line 1, line 2, and line 3, that's the translations of what is in those lines above in the picture, where it's red, blue, and yellow. Line 1 means Dubsiga, which is a personal name, apparently a powerful person. Line 2 is Iliat. I'm not sure if I said that right, but that's another personal name. And then line 3, Dynect, is German for your servant. So he's saying that translation is basically just talking about a servant. It has nothing to do with Planet Nibiru. But we're going to go on to what you was talking about, because this is important. Planet Nibiru, in the actual text itself, is not considered a planet. It is considered a city in Mesopotamia. There's actually ruins of a temple platform, which is also known as Nippur, Nibru, or Nibiru. Nibiru is the Akkadian word. Nibru, Nibru, is the word that the Sumerians used, and Nippur is what we use today as a modern term for those two words. And this is a brick structure on top, was constructed by American archaeologists around 1900. And so I always say this, just like with the Greek gods, because you mentioned the Greeks earlier, like Mount Olympus, all their gods sat on top of higher ground than the people below, the normal people. They always sat on top. So when people talked about heaven, it was because these guys, these kings, or whatever you want to call them, they were on a higher mountain than everybody else for two reasons. One, because it showed a status. And two, if the flood was to come and wipe something out, it wouldn't wipe out the person that was in control of the city state, basically, right? Just like how today we look at, if America was getting attacked, our president would be moved into secret places to be out of harm's way. This is the same thing that they would think of in their time frame. So they would sit higher. So their messengers, their angels, their God, the angels, the messengers would come from on top, bring the message down to the people, and then vice versa. So that's another way of looking at these individuals, that they was just on a higher status. Now, this is what's interesting. This book right here, the Oxford Handbook of Cuneiform Culture, remember I was speaking about that earlier. It literally talks about everything that you could possibly want to know about when it comes to the Anunnaki/Anunnaki. And I actually took the screenshot from my X account. Like I said, on my X account, social media, I take pictures of the book and I quote what's exactly written in there. And I make these kind of pictures and all kinds of different things so people can read it and make it interesting. And this is what it says in this book. It says the Karhu Abkelu was certainly also painted in antiquity, perhaps in a very similar way to the artist's reconstruction. Now, before I continue, the Abkelu, you know them as the ones that have the pine cone in their hand and a bag in their hand, and sometimes they're in a fish suit or wing-like type suit. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's usually who they are. But according to Mesopotamian tradition, these big fish are the companions of the god of wisdom, Enki/Ea, who dwells in the depths of the sea. They regularly emerged from the sea in order to teach mankind the cornerstones of civilization, such as agriculture, kingship, justice, and writing before the flood ended their coexistence. So when I say that the Anunnaki didn't come from planet Nibiru and say that they came from the depths of the sea, this is my source. Because Enki and the Apkallu dwelled in the depths of the sea, and they regularly emerged from the sea in order to teach us something.
So, I have an interesting theory for you. Because they're saying, because the way the seas were at the time, they were able to be on land, and they disappear when the waters recede. Could you, in fact, say the Anunnaki are inner Earth? Well, we
100%.
hear people refer to as inner Earth.
100%. That would be a great explanation of it. Yes, 100%. I agree 100% that they came more from inner Earth, hollow Earth, on Earth somewhere, more than anything about them coming from planet Nibiru, only because of the simple fact that when you look at their depictions, when you're looking at a pictographic script, right, you're looking at a picture, basically a picture, and that picture is going to tell a story. If I was to draw something coming outside of Earth's atmosphere, it would be a bird. It wouldn't be a fish. It wouldn't be something depicted like this. Now, later on, yes, we do have birds, and that's why I said the Apkallu are sometimes fish, and sometimes they're depicted as individuals with wings. But there's a whole meaning behind the idea of wings, which I'm still actually trying to learn about, because it's more than just flying. It has a lot to do with status in a lot of cases. But to keep it simple, when you think about Nibiru is not even the oldest city in Mesopotamia, right? So if you was to come from a different planet to name a city that you first founded that the gods are supposed to reside in, that it would be the oldest city, but it's not. So we get to the point now where, okay, now we're fighting, okay, are they coming from planet Nibiru or are they coming from the depths of the sea? And now my only thing is if I'm going off of a source, I'm going to go off the Oxford Handbook of Cuneiform Culture. Now, I'm not saying that this is 100% accurate. What I'm saying is that they give you the cuneiform tablets that say this. I already gave the website, CDLI. There's a couple of other websites that I can give you besides ETCSL and so on and so forth. But these texts actually say they came from Earth one way or another. Nothing about coming from a different planet, nothing coming from I don't even know how to say it, multi-dimensions or something like that,
Right.
So we get to the point now that you have to take what you can and go with the flow. So that's what I'm doing with this. Now, if I see a book from academia that can tell me what cuneiform says that the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru, then I won't even have to argue that anymore. I can say, I don't know what happened to that. My phone just went off. I must have said something to trigger it. But you can get, how can I say, you can get cuneiform tablets online, like I said, from anywhere. You can get it from, the Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature. You can get it from the Babylonian website that I was telling you, that's another one that I have out there. Then you have CDLI. You have there's so many different websites that would give you the actual cuneiform tablet identifier. So until I get a cuneiform tablet identifier that says the planet Nibiru is real, then right now all I can go off of what I've read so far. And that's why when you ask certain people, just like Billy Carson or anybody like that, can you tell me the cuneiform tablet identifier that goes with what you're saying? They usually can't produce it because there isn't one. So that's where you go into, okay, well, I'm going to go off of what I have. I'll give you another thing. The Abzu, also called Inger, literal meaning is basically Ab is the ocean and Zu, to know or deep, was the name for fresh water for underground aquifers. that was given a religious quality in Sumerian and Akkadian mythology. Lakes, springs, rivers, wells, and other sources of fresh water were taught to draw their water from the Abzu. Now, you heard of USOs, right? Besides UFOs, you heard USOs, right?
Right.
So that tells me, okay, UFOs get a lot of attention because a lot of people think they came from outside of Earth's atmosphere. But then you'll hear people talk about USOs, and it's just like maybe like a 2-minute conversation versus a 3-hour conversation about UFOs. And this is where I say, I think for us as a group of individuals, we need to pay attention more to our waters than outside of Earth's atmosphere, because our ancient text tells us, one, that the Anuna/Anunnaki came from the depths of the sea. Okay, you read the Abzu, which you can read in any text out there, the Abzu, and it's literally the ocean and no or deep. So there's no argument on what the Abzu is and where the Anunnaki came from. We have the information in our text available. I mean, anybody can pick up their phone, and just like how my phone was just listening and went off, maybe I said something close for it to go off. It's listening. It tells you, every time you pick up your phone, sometimes you'll see a commercial or something that was in there because it's listening. So we have access to this information. We have access to all this knowledge out here. Like I was telling you about the websites, EBL, Electronic Babylonian Library. This is another place where you can learn about the actual writing systems. It gives you what the text looks like, what it says, and so on and so forth. And you read where it says Apsu and it says underground water. So, and I agree with some Sumo. Nibiru is a place, but it's a place within Earth, not outside of Earth's atmosphere. And this is just another source that gives you this. This is the Electronic Babylonian Library. So you have the Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature, you have CDLI, Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative, and then you have the Electronic Babylonian Library. And there's other sources too. I have a lot of sources out there. But with right here, Nibiru, here's a part in the literature of ancient Sumer. It says, Enlil separating heaven from the earth and linking the two at Durankai, the sacred term for Nibiru. So Nibiru is also known as Dur-Ankai or Dur-Anki, depending on how you want to say it. So this is the sacred term for Nibiru. And the title for this is the Song of the Hoe, which is very interesting because it has to do with agriculture, right? So these sources, it gives you an idea of what Nibiru is. The same exact book. It says right here, unusually, the beginning of this narrative attempts to normalize the setting, location, and actors. Everything is just ordinary. And unlike many other mythical narratives, it takes place in the city of Nibiru, a real known location. So when that person was saying earlier, Sumo Blay was saying Nibiru was a place, it is. It's a real known location. It's a known location in Mesopotamia. And this book tells us that. And we don't have anything yet that says it's a planet. That just goes off of Zachariah Sitchin and Cylinder Seal VA 243. And then he also says, because they talk about heaven and the Bible and other places talk about individuals come from different places. I talked about Pleiades. A lot of people know Pleiades because of the Seven Sisters, but I have a book out there, the Popol Vuh, that actually tells us that the Pleiades system was created by 400 boys, and it has nothing to do with Seven Sisters. And the story goes was that basically they seen a giant helped them out do something. They plotted against kill the giant because they felt that the giant would take advantage of them. Then they tried to kill the giant, failed miserably because the giant already knew the plan because he overheard them. When they went to get drunk in their house, he brought their house down and they became the Pleiades system. Now, that's just a quick rundown on the Popol Vuh of what happened as how the Pleiades system was created by them. But then you have the Pleiades in the Mahabharata. And then you got the Pleiades in the Egyptian text. Then you have Pleiades in the Taino text. And Pleiades usually was seen around agricultural needs. So that's why they they looked at that sky system. It had nothing to do with seven sisters. Now, in different texts, yes, it did, but not all texts talk the same thing about Pleiades. I know Zechariah says that. I know Billy Carson say that, but that's not accurate, because there are texts that actually goes against what some of them say. It's just what is the most famous, I guess you can say. Here's another thing about Nibiru. And Nibiru Ta-Lu, when translated, literally means man from the city of Nibiru. He's the man on the street. So you can see that there's indications out there of Nibiru. This is information that we're all given, that we're all allowed. They even talk about in this book, my Nibiru, where black birch trees grow in a good place, my sanctuary Nibiru. Where white birch trees grow in pure place, my Nibiru's shrine is built in a good place. So we know that Nibiru is real. We know this because they talk about it. It's a physical place that humans can go to. Matter of fact, you can climb up the mountain that I showed, or the hill that I showed you, where they had that location at. Here's another one that's in this book about Nibiru. I mean, and when you see translation 1 through 12, of course, I didn't show the whole thing, but they give you the cuneiform tablet identifier for you to go online and look at that tablet for yourself. So it's not just these words are here. You can actually go online and find these tablets for yourself. So that's why I said, when I find that tablet that says Nibiru is a planet, then I would be like to say, okay, now I got something that actually says that. But we don't have anything that says that. But what we do have is that there was a city, the one we live in. Nibiru was the city, the one we live in. So Nibiru was a city. We get that. And here's more. I mean, it just goes on. This is from the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, the website itself. 104-16 in the shrine of Nibiru, Enki provided a meal for Enlil, his father. Now, I brought this up because of the simple fact that you've brought up Enki and Enlil. Most people would tell you that Enki and Enlil were brothers, right? One was older than the other one. But why in the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, or the book that I have on here also, would tell you that in the shrine of Nibiru, Enki provided a meal for Enlil, his father? Does that make you think?
It does, and it kind of plays into the story of like Zeus and his father Kronos, and it's kind of like laying the groundwork of, hey, we're getting ready to have this story play out again. May have
exactly
different reason, but it's the same story.
Exactly. And it just makes you think, like, why did it go from brothers to father, or father to brothers? Here's another thing that I was telling you. On the back of this book, The Literature of Ancient Sumer, it literally tells you what Nibiru is. It says an important city and cult center in north of Sumer, where the large majority of the manuscript sources for Sumerian literature have been found. I'm going to say that part again, where the large majority of the manuscript sources for Sumerian literature have been found. Center worship of gods like Enlil, Ninlil, and Ninhartad, also known as Nippur in modern scholarship. So, like I said, we know this is a place, right? In Eridu, it says in this, if you go to Britannica, I took this quote from Britannica, the website Britannica. It says Eridu, ancient Sumerian city south of Tal al-Makaya. Eridu was revered as the oldest city in Sumer. According to the king's list, and its patron god was Ea Enki, lord of the sweet waters that flow underneath or under the earth. Now, this is interesting. Okay. One, Eridu is the oldest city. So obviously, if I was coming from planet Nibiru and I was going to name the first city on my new planet, it would have been Nibiru, right? But it's not the oldest city. Eridu is. And then also the part where it says Ea Enki, lord of the sweet waters that flow underneath or under the earth, meaning the depths of the sea. Something that you was talking about when we go into the idea of what you called hollow earth. So
Right. Well,
that's
and
go ahead.
I like to point out, in our culture, we spend so much money in, science exploring space, and they call it the final frontier. And then it was like, I give credit to, Ballard and the people who were behind the Sequest series, because they said, Sequest, we are exploring the next, it became the next frontier. No, because they were like, space is the last. So what do we call our waters? Well, it's the next one, I guess.
Yeah,
But it raised a really important question of, why is it we are constantly looking to the stars and space and pay
hmm
no attention to the waters?
exactly. And that's my thing. That is exactly my thing, because they say scientifically, and this is scientifically, they say that we know more about space than we know about our own oceans. Now,
Right.
I don't even know how to even understand that and comprehend that when space is as big as it is, and it can take, years and years just to get to a different planet. But we know more about the space and the atmosphere and the ideas of these planets and all this other stuff than we know about our own oceans. And that just makes me think, because on this next slide is important, the Anunnaki are widely recognized as among the earliest recorded deities in human history. This is where we get the ideas of these gods from, primarily due to the advanced Sumerian writing system. But what's interesting is that when analyzing the religious systems and cosmologies of cultures across the ancient world, striking parallels emerge between the Anunnaki and deities from other regions, such as the Egyptians, the Dogon of the west of Africa, the Mesoamericans, and the Aboriginal Australians. Now, I bring up the Dogon tribe because, for the simple fact that the Dogon tribe believed that there was a group of individuals that came from Sirius, and that's just a whole thing of somebody come from different planets and so on and so forth. But it also makes me wonder, because a lot of their rituals have to do with agriculture also, and that's when I was talking about Igigi. So I'm wondering if most people are just mistaking the Anunnaki and the Igigi, and is it because the Anunnaki told the Igigi to create humans, or the Igigi told the Anunnaki to create humans? Who knows? I mean, we just know that Enki was in charge of it. But that, but it also says that Enki came from the depths of the sea. So it just gets to a whole idea of who the Anunnaki is. This next tablet or screenshot that I have up here is just basically the shared symbolism between everybody. There's, like I said when we started in the beginning, the Holy Bible has a lot of relationship with what the Sumerians and Akkadians say. And I would say this: Abraham goes back to around 2000 BC. That goes into the Sumerian and Akkadian time frame. So it's obvious that Abraham knew who the Sumerians and Akkadians were. He's
Right.
also would have known who the Anunnaki were. But my question is, which one of those gods that he decided to worship solely, meaning monotheistically, right? And like I have on this slide right here is basically the Egyptian, Greek, Mesoamerican, Biblical, Native Americans, Aboriginal Australians, Romans, the Celtics, the Yoruba, Taino, and Dogon tribe. And it's just basically just some of the gods that I found from the Anunnaki. And I try to see who they were compared to different cultures and civilizations around the world. Like, for instance, Enlil in Egypt could have been Ra, or Amon Ra, or he could have been Zeus. He could have been Jupiter. I mean, he could have been any of these, just depending on the way they wanted Enlil to fit with different cultures. And I put this on there based off of what I've read. So if I read something, and this is constant, this slide constantly gets updated. When I read something that somebody says, I put it in there and try to say, okay, this is what they meant by this. It's just basically how it's basically to show people that a god can be named one thing in one religion, but because of language, the confusion in language and linguistics, they can be, something totally different. I mentioned Anton Parks earlier. Um, and a lot of people wonder, about the forbidden fruit that Adam and Eve ate. Well, Anton Parks has this book called Eden: The Truth About Our Origin, and he gives the cuneiform tablet identifier, like right here, CBS 11065, column 6, and then he compares it to the New American Standard Bible. So he gives you the scripture in the Bible of how these stories are together. And basically, for the clay tablets from Mesopotamia, Enki revealed the secret of metallurgy to the woman, while his sons, the great messenger observers, cast metal and cohabited with the mother of the human race. The mother knows the secret of the gods, the tool revealed. So it was metallurgy that was the forbidden fruit. And he compares this to the New American Standard Bible by saying Genesis 6, 1-5, in the book of Enoch, chapter 8, and verse 1, the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bear children to them, the Nephilim, which brought corruption among mankind. Azazel transmitted the secret of the gods, the knowledge of metals, to humanity, and so corrupted it. So you can see in the old Sumerian clay tablets how there's a similarity with not just the Bible, but the book of Enoch. So I brought this up, and this is I took a screenshot from my X account, because this is what I do. I take a picture of the book and I quote exactly what it says. And it gets more into that. The same book, The Knowledge of the Forbidden Fruit, was simply that tool of making, whose secret was not to be divulged. And the rabbinical views of the later period, this concept was associated with a sexual taboo, because at the same time, Enki incited the humans to reproduce themselves. That's basically what I'm talking about when it went from creating humans to now we got the idea of Enki telling man and woman to create new species. But here's more information about the. Oh, go ahead.
I was say I always find it interesting that people don't pay attention to the verbiage of like the origin story where you have Adam and Eve. Eve eats of the fruit, the forbidden fruit. Mm-hmm. So they're cast out with Cain and Abel, and Cain and Abel marry women of other tribes. And I go, wait a minute. Adam and Eve were the only two humans in existence and had Cain and Abel. Where did these women of other tribes come from? What in the world? And everyone's like, well, there were other tribes out and about. And I was like, well, but then Adam and Eve aren't the only two, people on the planet. So which one's right? Was it Adam and Eve are the only humans and these other tribes are, like they say, the Anunnaki and the Sumerians, and so that's how this all got started? Or, it raises the question, because it's like you were saying earlier with your stuff, the verbiage and the story don't line up. It's like, how can you have 4 people and then 4 people got married and more kids were born? It's like, wait a minute, where did they come from?
Yeah, that's exactly how I think. I wonder, where if Adam and Eve were the only ones on here, what about Lilith? Because I'm pretty sure you heard about Lilith, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, see, so we know original. Exactly, but what if I told you, according to Samuel Noah Kramer, Lilith was the first vampire? And that's what he says in one of his books. She's literally the first vampire. So
I actually would believe that. And I also was theorizing, because they say God took a rib from Adam and Eve was born. I go, well, that's genetic manipulation. Lilith disappears from literature. Eve is born. Is Eve the genetic manipulation of Lilith?
Mm-hmm.
And you could argue that even. And a lot of people are like, no, no, it's two separate people. Lilith is overdoing this thing over here. But I'm like, but you don't hear that. So how do you know? And
Right.
it's like these people. And I even at first, when I heard like Cain and Abel were, got married, I was like, did they marry their sisters? Because it's like there's no other people around. But when did they get sisters? And it's like this story is getting very creepy all of a sudden.
Yep, I actually have a book on that about Adam and Eve's life, and along with Cain and Abel, and possibly sisters and stuff like that. I actually have a book on that. And it's actually a forbidden book. I can't remember the name off of it on top of my head. It's like the first, second, and third. Is it? I can't remember what it's called. I'm not even going to mess it up. But yeah, you're right. It's amazing about the what ifs, because they say one thing and then you wonder what you're wondering. Okay, how did that happen if it was only one way? And that's why I said I brought up Anton Parks earlier, because when people talk about the forbidden fruit, they think of an apple, actually, which is never mentioned of an apple. But if you think about the idea of a depiction of an apple, them holding an apple, remember when I said depictions would tell a story? So that
Right.
apple would represent agriculture, right? They
It's
knew
almost
how
like
to,
the Prometheus tale.
yeah, exactly. So and you got to think of it like this: metallurgy is good for agricultural needs, which can sustain human life on this planet longer, right? But it also can shorten human life by using weapons of mass destruction, from anywhere from starting with pistols, bow and arrows, um, uh, crossbows, rifles, missiles, and all kinds of stuff. So metallurgy is the good and the bad, right? Um, so, you know, just talking about that by itself, it just lets me know that when I read different books, I kind of can put the picture together better, especially when I've read Anton Parks. You look at the picture of Adam and Eve eating the fruit, the apple, but you don't think that agriculture was the forbidden knowledge, because that you have to. It's almost like you have to put that together. And I'm glad that Anton Parks did, because when I look at a picture of Adam and Eve now, I'm thinking of, okay, it was metallurgy that was given to them, and that's how, that's probably why made God mad or whatever. But that's
Well,
neither here and there for me on
and,
that.
and the other thing that I always found interesting about the story is, why would you create a tree of knowledge in a garden where people are living and then tell people they are not to touch this tree? It's
Yeah, and
like,
what was the
why is
yeah
it there
what was
then?
not only that, but my main question was, what are you trying to keep from me from knowing? Why can't I have the same knowledge you have? You'll let me eat from the tree of life and live forever and toil this earth, because you created me to toil this earth, but you don't want me to have knowledge. And that's actually part of what started me on this journey, was why didn't God want us to have certain information? You
And
know?
to me, what was interesting too of the story that to me didn't make any sense was, if you remember the story right, when they got cast out after, finding the forbidden knowledge, the first punishment was, you will now see each other as naked. I was like, why is that a punishment? Why is that a bad thing that we now know? Oh, I'm not clothed. So it always struck me as odd that it's like that was the first punishment that he dealt out. It's like, what? I
Yep.
often wonder what's the deeper meaning of that, because it can't just be surface, because that just doesn't make sense to go, oh, well, now you're gonna view each other as naked and have to cover up. I'm like, ooh, that's a deep wound there, God. Wow, you really, put me on my place on that one.
Yeah, it just shocks you because a lot of people would say, you know, God is all forgiving. So why couldn't God forgive that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And some, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that totally well. I'm assuming I got close, and I apologize if I'm off, but they were saying, yeah, he introduced shame. And yeah, you could argue that, that is a form of shame, but it seems like there would be much deeper cuts that he could make before introducing that would not be the first if he's so upset.
Right, right. Yeah, it makes you wonder, and it makes you guess a lot about what's going on. That's why one of the things that I put up about the Keto Festival in the slideshow was because I know a lot of people wouldn't know much about it, and this is just basically that tells the story, like I was saying earlier, about the Enuma Elish, about how Marduk uh, uh, beat up and won against Tiamat, and now that we got the planets and all this other stuff. So I wanted to make sure that people understand that there's a reason for everything that they talk about. And we, at our time, in our lifetime, we just have to basically research this information as much as possible and get the right information out there because um, I've never heard any of the people from the Ancient Alien Show or anything talk about the Aikido Festival, but they'll talk a lot about the Enuma Elish. And I feel like you're only giving out, you know, maybe a quarter of the information when you leave the Aikido Festival out. Um, Here's like from the Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature, that website. Here's it where it talks about Enki and Ninma 1.1.2. It talks about in those days, in the days when heaven and earth were created, in those nights, in the nights when heaven and earth were created. You can see they have their own creation story. Then they have, you know, the debate between grain and sheep. Should you be a vegetarian or should you be somebody who eats meat, right? And it says at the time Enki spoke to Enlil, father Enlil. Remember, Enki and Enlil are not brothers in this section. They're father and son. Now sheep and grain have been created on the holy mound. Let us send them down from the holy mound. Enki and Enlil, having spoken their holy words, sent sheep and grain down from the holy mound. So people had a choice to eat. They could either eat, you know, vegetarian food like, or they can eat meat stuff. They had the option, right? And then you got right here, Inanna and An. This is the section that falls under that, C.1.3.5. And who created gods and humankind gazed at holy Inanna. So we have, you know, not just the creation from Enki and Ninma, but we also have the creation part from Inanna and An, or Anu, I should say. So, I mean, this is straight from the actual text, and this is straight from the tablets that anybody can see. And I just ended it with my book. That was the end of the slideshow. I didn't even realize that's the other one. I have my own book, Journey Through the Origins of History, and I went bestseller on that. And it's $20 on Amazon, and I just basically go into details of all the stuff that I talked about.
Yeah, I gotta say, I like the cover. It's it's kind of classy, but it also says, yeah, this is what the life of a researcher is like. You're buried in piles of books.
Yeah, and these are all my favorite books. So you have Godfrey Higgins, you have Andrew George Smith, you have so the books that's in the blue and the red that's on the left side, that's one is all about Jesus, and one of them is all about Virgin Mary. So these are some of my favorite books. I have I have an 1873 Bible, and this is just and it's just exactly what you said. It was to show the world that this is what I'm doing to get this information. I am looking through all these books and reading through all these books, and I'm presenting them to the world. Just like I said, I have my own YouTube channel where I have a section called What I've Learned from Reading These Books. And I'm going through every single book in my library that I possibly can. I'm not saying that I'll be able to go through all of them because I got a lot of books, but I'm going through a lot of them that I can. And a lot of them, like the Book of Enoch, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Sumerian texts, the Akkadians, the Hittites, the Celtics, the Druids. I talk about, I put all that stuff in there. And then even like I showed when I was showing the screenshots of, my X account, and sometimes on Facebook, but mostly on X, I show where I get my information and I quote it exactly from the book. Even if it's a misspelling, even if it doesn't make sense, I quote what's in there in that book because I'm trying to show people, look, don't take my word for it. Matter of fact, I tell people right now, anybody that's listening right now, don't take my word for anything. Take the sources that I presented to you and go use those sources and see what I said was incorrect or not. And I guarantee you, all you'll see is just me quoting what's written in the books. And it's mostly because I'm retired. I told you I was in the military. Right. I'm retired. I'm 42 years old. And there are people out there that have a 9-to-5 job, and I respect people's time and I respect people's passion. And instead of me leading you through a rabbit hole, I want to give you a hole that's already dug up that shows the treasure within. You see what I'm saying? So
I do.
If I'm giving you, okay, the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, if you go in there, you have to know how to use the website. You got to know what words to use, because if you type in a word, like if you type in an Anunnaki, like I said, you're not going to find anything. You type in the word Anuna and boom, everything pops up. And that's, I'm trying to help people get the information. I always say there's not one book out there that I can read that will have in all the information. That would be one big ass book. You know what I'm saying? So I would have to read other books. And then I have to rely on people like you and others who do podcasts and discussions with other people who read, because they will say what they've learned from books. And if it strikes my curiosity enough, I will go out there and buy that book. Matter of fact, my whole entire library, I have 2 libraries, one here in my study room and one in the living room. And every book of mine has been a recommendation of some sort. Just talking to different people or looking online and trying to figure out. And this is not all of it is academia. So it's not just college, written out books and people who went to college. It's normal, regular people like me. I didn't graduate from college. All I do is read books. And if you see on my X account, just scroll through it, you'll learn that all I do is just share what I've read, and that's it. From everything. My website is the same thing. The only reason why I wrote my book was because eventually I'm going to pass away. That's nobody can take that and keep me on this planet forever. So the information that I have would not be here, but in book format. So that's why I took most important points that I've learned from social media and what people talk about the most, and I put it in my book. I give you a great example. A lot of people will talk about the Big Bang Theory, but they don't know how that word came about. In my book, I actually tell you where that wording comes from. It comes from Fred Hoyle, which he was basically trying to put down Georgi Lemaitre, who came up with the idea of the primeval atom, which is basically the Big Bang in his eyes, in Fred Hoyle's eyes, on how the universe came to be from a single explosion, basically, right? So he was trying to take a word to make it dismissive to Georgi Lemaitre's stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it, man. I hope you enjoyed it, bro. I try to give you the best information that I could on the sources that I have.
Yeah, no, you did perfectly well. And one question I have for you is purely speculative and just kind of wanting your opinion on is, as we established, Nibiru is not a planet, it's a city or a location. So would Tiamat also be not a planet, and so hence not the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, but a city here on Earth somewhere?
Well, Tiamat was always considered a serpent of some sort. And it has been translated into a planet when you read the Enuma Elish, when you get Marduk and Tiamat. But it always had to do with a serpent. And usually, I was just reading this book on this earlier. Usually when they seen a serpent in the sky, or something like that that they describe as a serpent. It usually had to do like a comet or a meteorite or a meteor or something like that, a meteor or something like that, and or brimstone from heaven that they will call it sometimes. Um, it was foundational beginning of how the earth came to be, meaning that um, we know that in the Bible it says that the earth was destroyed and recreated a number of times, right? And it could have been because of these comets and all these other meteors that were coming and hitting planet Earth and so on and so forth. But the thing is that it represents the creation of humans on, or everything on planet Earth. It was the beginning, like almost like if you think of it like bacteria coming from outer space, from meteor hitting planet Earth, and then that bacteria evolutionized this way into what we are now, right? So
that actually begs a really interesting question of, if I am God and I just created this planet and there's people on it, would I not put a protective field around it so that something from space wouldn't destroy it? So if God created the earth, as they say, and we have literature where it's been destroyed several times and recreated, what does that say about God? That he was like, hey, here's Earth. Okay, I'm done. I don't care anymore. See ya. And he's like, oh, wait, it's been destroyed. Well, all right, I'll help you all out and rebuild it. Oh, it happened again? All right, here we go. Rebuild it. That doesn't sound like a God to me.
Yeah, and that's part of my journey too, is understanding what other people mean as God. When I think of God, all I think of is a supreme being, supreme deity, something that's in charge of everything, something that that everything flows through, everything goes through it. What I don't even really know how to explain it. I don't think anybody can put it into words where anybody can understand it, but it's basically that we're all started from, and we all started from something. Whether you're a plant, you're an animal, a rock, or whatever, it all started from one thing, and then that one thing multiplied, and then it just kept going and going. Yeah, it might have taken something else to help it along its way, but and I just see it as a supreme being, supreme deity. Sometimes, to explain it better for people to understand what I mean by that, is mathematics. Math is the number one universal language. You can't change math for anything. It can be understood from anywhere. I kind of look at.
I argue differently because I, like, through elementary school and college, 1 minus 1 was 0. Then I got into calculus, and they go, there is no 0. 1 minus 1 never equals 0. I'm like, wait, in one math class, you're telling me like 14 years of schooling just got thrown out the window. What?
Yep. Yep.
How does this make sense?
Yep. And yeah, and it does blow your mind because I'm, like I said, I'm not good at math at all. So I try to in so many ways just try to give people, I try to use every tool in my possession to help different people. I don't, how can I say, I don't try to say that I know everything. I just know where I've read it. I know I can just say I've read it. That's all I can say. That's what I've read. And I'm able in so many, because tools are so easily accessible, like ChatGPT and Grok, I could say, hey Grok or ChatGPT, who's the first person that said planet Nibiru was a planet? Even though I don't remember the name Zachariah Sitchin, I know somebody said it. I know the person. I know I read it. I just can't remember the name. I type it in and I see ChatGPT says Zachariah Sitchin, and boom, I remember. I almost put it like this. My memory is almost like the way we listen to music and we sing to music. You know how when you can be in the car and you playing your song and rhythm is going, the beat is going, the flow is going good. You can sing every single word perfectly, no problems. Don't even have to think about it. It just rolls off your tongue. As soon as somebody powers that thing off or something interrupts that song for a second, you go dumbfounded like a deer in a headlight. You forget everything.
Yeah.
Even though you know the song, but it just stops you because it's almost a rhythm that goes with it. And that's how my memory is with my books. Some of the stuff that I said, I can't remember what book it is. If I watch this show, which I will go back, I can remember what I said and say, oh, I know what book this is. Let me see if it's one of these books. And I can go through those tabs that I was showing you and actually go through those tabs and be able to find it. You know what I'm saying? So those tabs are more like my rhythm thing. I go through, I know which books talks about certain things. I have books on Anunnaki, so I'll go all through the books about Anunnaki and my favorite sources on them. Same thing with the Egyptians. I have books on the Egyptians. I mean, the pyramid text, the coffin text. You know, I always tell people this. You don't have to have a library of 1,000 books. I know a lot of people will brag about it a lot. Oh, I've read so many books. I do it too. I mean, I just love bragging about reading books. But if you read 1,000 books and them 1,000 books is based off of one book, you just read one book and 1,000 different interpretations of that one book. Right. But if you read 1,000 different books on different arguments, you have 1,000 different arguments you can pull from, you know, wherever. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so
not only 1,000 arguments, but you could start to correlate and go, well, this is here and this, you know, concept may get repeated 500 times out of the 1,000. Yep. Well, maybe there's something to that fact, and maybe that's more
the
facts
pattern
than this. You can start to build the story from that and going, more just like when I was talking with someone about the moon being not always here, that it's not a piece of the earth that broke off, that it was placed here. And everyone's like, no, that's not possible. I go, how can the Zuni, the Greeks, the Romans, the pre-Columbians, the indigenous, these are all people on alternate sides of the world, have no communication, we're told in history yet, talk about societies that lived before the moon was in the sky. You can't have an object in the sky and then say, well, these people were before that at origin, so it had to come later. And the Zuni even talk about they know who placed it there. And it's like, why would they say that? And then other cultures that are on different countries and technically you could almost argue continents are all saying, yeah, this is not this, but then go, well, yeah, the moon was part of the earth. It always is. And that's the way it's going to be. It's like, no way. Not if we have like 7, 8, 9 cultures all over the world talking about something. Something's got to be off on this. And I'm thinking it's you, science, saying the earth has always been here, because these cultures don't have a reason to lie about a story about pre-lunar civilizations. So, and being all over the world, it kind of lends to, yeah, I'm sorry, there was time before the moon.
Yep. So you don't have to bring up the actual screenshot. I did find the Sumerian king list breakdown.
Oh, I'll bring it up.
And I'll read it real quick, because this is actually breaks down how you can look at the thousands of years into basic normal human years. So I said, when you see those numbers in the Sumerian king list, one simple way to make sense of them is to stop treating them as years and instead treat them like days, then convert them into normal human years the way we do today. You do that by dividing the number by 365. When you take 28,800 and divide it by 365, you get about 79 years, which is a normal human lifespan. When you divide 36,000 by 365, you get about 99 years, which is old but still possible. When you divide 43,200 by 365, you get about 118 years, which is extremely long, but still within the range of often, which is used for legendary figures, which is still in the range of people being human, 118 years. When you when you apply that same math to the total antediluvian number of 241,200 and divide it by 365, you get about 661 years, which clearly is not meant to describe one person, but could possibly represent the length of an entire era of age. This does not mean the ancient scribes meant days instead of years, but it shows that once you apply modern math, those massive numbers can be understood in a human way rather than as people literally living hundreds of thousands of years. So this is something that I took from what I was reading, from everything that I knew about, I mean, what we consider days and so on and so forth. And I hope I didn't mess up or misread something just because it's, on the other screen. But if you take a screenshot of this, copy it, paste it, put it in ChatGPT or Grok, it will tell you that that's a logical explanation. Now, I did that without the help of, without being math savvy, but with the help of ChatGPT and Grok. I typed in what I knew and said, hey, how can I do this? And I mean, 118 years old is old, but that's still acceptable.
I wonder at the leap year, how much that would throw off the reading, because we have 366 days in a year every 4 years. So I kind of wonder, how off would that be if we took into account the leap year? Right. Or if it's a small amount, in which case it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and that's why, for me, when I read about the Sumerian kings list, just to hear somebody say, oh, these kings lived thousands of years, I wanted to see, how can I take this and put it into human years? Like, how can I take this information and apply it that everybody can see that would make sense in the modern aspect? And that's what I did. And that's what I do. And I'm not saying that I'm right on this. I just have an explanation that nobody has ever said. And they just say, because a lot of people say, well, how did they live thousands of years? Well, my question is, how do you know they lived thousands of years? Let's figure this out together. And then I figured out that it's normal time frame.
And I'm not meaning to make it sound like I don't follow your logic and your, path. I'm trying to think of a question that somebody who is like trying to prove something might go, well, you didn't account for this, and so therefore, and it's like that's why I'm saying, the number could be so small it doesn't really matter, so it kind of diffuses the argument right there of going, well, so somehow divide by 4, because it's every 4 years, and or add 1. It gets too complicated. It's like, there is no way to. We've made our system so complicated that it just is. No one is meant, I think, to understand it. I think it's just meant to just be out there and people just blindly accept, because it's just, when you go to try to understand it, it's like you're always going to find something that will be like, well, no, now if we take this into account, this is off. Well, now this could be off because of this. And so it could become, like you're saying, a never-ending rabbit hole. Just to prove, what does biblical age to modern age look like? And it's like, and so I think the way you did it is actually the better way because, I mean, in all honesty, when I looked up why do we even have a leap year, the number one
Mhm.
answer was because we subtracted a month, and to equalize
Yeah.
the time, there is a point like 1/6 of a day that equates to every 4 years being a day. So it's like, even they admit they carved up the calendar, and to make it work they had to add an extra day.
Yep.
And so that the leap year day may not actually really be a true day. It's just an artificial construct made to make something make fit.
Yep. Yep. I agree. I agree. But yep, that was my whole presentation, man. I gave you everything that I could on that, man. You know, I'm not gonna lie, man. You know, I enjoy people like you who do these great interviews because it helps you get the information out there. And then, you know, I've been looking at your YouTube channel, and you got some very interesting stuff. So that's why I definitely felt like I think you would have enjoyed this information.
I do, and one of the things that I think is really interesting and synchronistic, and I don't know if you came across this with the shows yet, but when talking about the Anunnaki, at first I would say, oh, the gods of Nibiru, because that's what everybody said. And then later on, I go, well, that's a collective. People are saying it's a collective of different star races. So the Anunnaki is a collective. It's not a race. And then it's like, and then just go on and saying, yeah, the collective known as the Anunnaki. And then you come in and you go in your presentation, the Anunnaki are a collective. And I was like, there's the written proof.
Yep. But they're only the collective for the name of gods. The Igigi are the great gods. That's what you can't
Right.
forget. That's what struck me when I first read that book. When I first got to that, for so many years, I was like, dang, I thought the Anunnaki were in charge. But the whole time is the Igigi
Well,
or
see,
Igigi, whatever.
yeah, and now I'm thinking, because of the correlation I made before, I'm even looking at, a further step with the Greeks are the Titans would be the Agigi, because they're the ones that created everything. They're the ones that are maintaining the world.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is, just like, and Lil's story doesn't say he wiped out the Agigi, it just says he took over.
Mm-hmm.
The gods of Greece imprisoned the Titans and became the rulers of the world. And so both stories really are still in alignment of saying, yeah, they didn't destroy anything, because I feel like if these are the creator gods, and if you destroy the creator gods, does the creation go with them? Because how do you know how to maintain this thing? And so it's like, you need the creator gods because they need to maintain the creation. So
Right,
you don't
right,
kill the only one that knows how it works.
right. Right. You're right. Absolutely.
And I was going to say to Anna, I did not put up one of your comments because I speak very little Russian, and so I don't like putting comments up that I don't know what they say, and so that's why I did not put up your comment in Russian. If you could translate it to English, I will happily put it up if you haven't already, but I just wanted to address that's why I didn't add that one comment, because I don't like to put up something I don't know what it's saying or asking, cuz I'm assuming one thing, and if it says something else, then I'm like, "Uh-oh, I don't want to get in trouble with someone going, do you know what you put on your screen? No. Well, why did you put it on there? Well, I trusted the person." But yeah, and so one thing I would like to ask you is for people who may be, researching this and, hitting roadblocks and hitting, like people, wanting, not wanting the Zachariah story over the true story. And by no means am I saying Zachariah is wrong. Things get mispronounced all the time. I mean, look at the movie Stargate. I mean, the guy was translating the hieroglyphs, and he's like, who translated this? Well, I use this guy's translation. And he's crossing off like door to heaven. This is a Stargate. Hence, we got the term Stargate. And so, I'm not saying that Zachariah Sitchin is wrong and everything. Maybe mistranslated a few things. We're all human. But we can't also just take and make one person the authority of everything. We have to have multiple stories, multiple resources to pull from. Otherwise, we'll never know really what it says. And I like how I was talking with someone who put up a picture and it had like 3 wavy lines over a pyramid. And I said, oh, that's water to a pyramid. Because 3 wavy lines to me means water. And she goes, no, actually that's air. And I'm like, well, actually 3 wavy lines in a pyramid could be air. So there you go. That's a prime example of how, we're looking at these images and we're going by our best knowledge to go, this is what this image means. This is what this image means. Put them together. This is what they're saying. When in fact, in reality, is we don't really know what the image means.
Right.
I mean, so we're doing our best. And so that's why I say I don't like saying anyone is wrong. I just like to say, use multiple sources.
Yep, that's what I like to say. Use multiple sources.
Well, thank you for your time. And is there anything that you feel like we haven't covered or something that may have popped up in your mind with what we've been talking about after that you're like, hey, I'd really like for people to understand this and hear this above everything else kind of message?
Yeah, I just want people to understand, look, everything that I just told you today is just your stepping stone to grab the sources that I gave you and just look at it for yourself. And I'm always available to help anybody with these sources. I actually help a lot of people navigate through that ETCSL website because, like I said, if you don't use the proper words, you're not going to find it because you have to search for this stuff. And I just want people to understand that I don't think that I'm right in anything. I just know what I've read and I'm only sharing it and I want to bring it. I'll be honest, and I say this a lot, and I know a lot of people says that is big-headed of me, but I haven't met anybody that takes the books that they read, take a picture of the book and quote exactly what's inside that book rather than just saying this person said that. I literally when I say it, the source is right there in front of you also. It's given to you. So I don't want anybody to think that all this stuff comes off the top of my head or it's my belief or my feelings or anything like that. I believe that in order to find the truth, you have to let go of your emotions. If you can't let go of your emotions, you would never find the truth because your emotions will always dictate what you believe rather than the facts. And that's why a lot of people can't believe that somebody's the way they are because they're emotionally involved with that person rather than taking that emotion out and saying, look, this ain't the right person. And I don't ever want to say that the journey will ever end. My journey ends the day that I'm putting it in the dirt. I would never be able to gain the knowledge that I want. Every single day that I take away from reading, I'm losing out on information. And there's only but so much you can do when you read every single day. I literally take 6 to 8 hours out of my day to read. And I try to present all that information by any means necessary to people, whether it's through interviews, sharing the books online, or doing videos. I literally try to give the best information. And I'll be honest with you, it makes me feel good to know that I'm on a narrow path of actually just sticking to the sources, no matter what my feelings may be. I started off with Zachariah Sitchin. His book came out in 1976. I didn't know about Samuel Noah Kramer then because I wasn't interested in Samuel Noah Kramer at that time. I was interested because of all the aliens and all that other stuff that was going on. You know, the Travis Walton story. You know, the Betty and Barney Hill. You know what I'm saying? All that stuff played a part. So I just want people to understand there are sources out there. It's just you probably haven't found that source yet. So when you're looking for these questions or these answers for these questions, you're going to have to do a deep dive. And sometimes you're going to have to take hours out of your day to do that. That means no TikTok, no YouTube, no, watching TV or anything like that. You put your head in those books, those articles, and even classes. Like I said, I've taken a class from Bar Ilan University. I do want to point out everybody is available. They have this opportunity to go to edx.org. And that's a website where you can go and take all kinds of free classes from places like Harvard and so many other places, where you can see that you can take these 6 to 8 week classes and get the same information that they teach in the schoolhouse. I have certificates from Harvard. I'm not saying that I'm a Harvard graduate or educated, but I've taken classes from Harvard and got certificates from them from some of this stuff that I wanted to learn about. So that's literally about it, man. You getting sneezing.
It always makes me laugh about sneezes because you're like, oh my god, it's about, and then it's like a minute later, you're like, God, I must look so silly sitting there like, okay, there it goes.
Well, I appreciate this. I appreciate this opportunity.
Yes, and one last question I have for you, and I don't know if you've ever been asked this on a podcast before, but it seems like, and I'm making an assumption based on what we've talked about and what you've shared, that you are focused on the Anunnaki, and the rest of the world, you're kind of like, yeah, that'll be what it is. And the reason I'm saying this is because my question to you is, what made you go, and I know you say you read Zachariah Sitchin, but he talks about other cultures too, and so what was it that made you go, yeah, you got the Norse over here, so what? You got the Greeks, you got the Romans, Etruscans, you got all these other cultures, but the Anunnaki, that's the one I want to focus on. So what really was it that, I'm guessing my question is, what really drew you to want to search and invest your time into the Anunnaki over all the other cultures like Tartaria or, Babylonians? Well, you kind of hit the Babylonians, so like Tartaria, the Celts, or the Norse traveling into like Texas where people say they've never been here, but we have Norse runes predating, early times. So it's like, yeah, we don't really know our own history. So what was it that made your aha moment be, the Anunnaki is going to be my focus?
Well, because when I read about the Egyptians, the Celts, the Romans, or the Mesoamericans or anybody, they seem to have a lot of similarities with what is told through the Sumerians, the Anunnaki, or the Mesopotamians, period. And it's not the words that is used, it's their depictions, their signs and symbols. That's what drove me drew me to it because I'll give you an example. The cross. Everybody knows what the cross is, but we also know what the swastika is, and that has a lot of similarities between the two. And it was never always a bad thing. I mean, you can go to Asia right now, Korea right now, South Korea right now, and you can see their symbol right on windows and stuff like that. I've seen it. I've been there. It's a religion type. It's for the religious. But
it's
it was
actually a
because
symbol of peace.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because of the signs and symbols are so identical. I wanted to know the origin, so I know what the Celtics are because Godfrey Higgins has this book called "The Celtic Druids." He's a historian from like 1836, and he has a book on there. So I know what their signs and symbols are. I know what the Greek signs and symbols are. I know the Norse and Romans. Matter of fact, Norse mythology is one of my favorite mythologies to learn about, just because it's always about bravery and how can I say it?
Humanity.
Yeah. That's
humanistic gods.
Yeah, there you go. That's the best way to put it. Yeah, exactly. So I love Norse mythology. I just talk about the Sumerians and the Anunnaki mostly. The reason why I did a presentation on them is because when you remember in the slideshow, I also had Norse mythology and Greeks and all that other stuff on the top. I tried to see which gods was with that god. Like if the Celts had a god, who would that be related to towards the Anunnaki? And it's only because I just wanted to know the origins. Like where did this start from?
Yeah, and I often had the opinion of, because the church went in and, quote, removed or destroyed the statues of the Roman gods.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought that was rather strange, because these are statues worth money. So you would think you're going to preserve these for potential money, in case we ever needed, raise money quickly. Hey, we have this stockpile of art worth millions. We can fund ourselves on that. But that aside, it always made me, curious why they would remove them. And my thought was, is it because Zeus and the Roman god, the Greek gods and the Roman gods and other gods were looking so much alike that they couldn't have that, because it would raise people's questions?
Yep.
Because if you see someone looking like this god over here and this god over here, wait, how did they look alike? Are they the same god? And then it's like, well, now your religion's out the window if everybody goes, well, these are the same god. And so I've often wondered, are the Anunnaki the gods of the Greeks, the gods of the Romans, the gods of the Norse? Because
a lot of people believe it
are alike.
Yep. A lot of similarities, a lot.
Yeah. And it would make sense why, if you're coming in and saying there's only one God and this is the story, you can't have gods looking like other gods. You got to get rid of those.
Yep. Gets that deep.
It does, and we'll definitely have to have you on again to continue this, because I feel like we've only hit like probably not even the full tip of the iceberg. So
yeah, I like I said earlier, I really didn't like doing PowerPoint slides. I actually have, and I was just looking at it, I actually have a couple of them that I did that I didn't even realize, but the Anunnaki one is the one that I put most of my time in. But I can definitely pull up, if you give me a subject, I can pull up any subject that, like, we can talk about Pleiades. I can bring up all the sources that I have about Pleiades, from the Mahabharata to the Book of Enoch to the Mesopotamians to Taino tribe and the Taino tribe is basically the Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Haitians, and stuff like that. I talk about. I mean, you give me a subject, I grab about 4 or 5 books, and I create you a really good PowerPoint slide like I did today.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I will leave you with this message, and that is from my heart and the heart of my shows to you. Thank you for what you're doing for humanity. Thank you for putting the time and energy into doing what you love and showing up and sharing your knowledge with us and where you get your knowledge from. I think that's very important and is missing in this world now. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, and be sure to check out the rebirthoftheword.com. Follow along with his shows. And do you want to talk about your podcast show real quick?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel, I have different playlists. I do interviews just like you do. But my 2 major playlist categories that I put a lot of time in is what I've learned from reading these books. That's a playlist on there. It's basically me going over the books that I've read, what it says in there. I read exactly what the tabs say that I have on there. And then my other one is boots on ground. So I like to visit different places. I've been all the way from South Korea to California to all kinds of places where I go visit museums, historical sites, and I just do a video on it. I make a little quick video on it. Anything from like pirates museums to the oldest museum in America to historical markers. I have an app on my phone where I go different historical markers in different cities and just record the history of that city. So
that's very cool. And so, yeah, follow along because you never know when he's going to be in your neck of the woods and stumbling on a mystery in your area that you may be fascinated by. And follow along with my shows because you never know when he'll be popping in and sharing more with us. And so do know you're always welcome on my show. And thank you so much for wanting to be a guest on my show and for picking my show. And so I'm honored and grateful and so appreciative that you saw my work and was like, yeah, this is the right guy to help bring this information out. So that means a lot to me because that means what I'm doing is coming off right.
Oh yeah. You got it going on over there, bro.
Well, I appreciate it because there are some days I wonder what are we doing? Why did we sign up for this?
You're doing it because you love it as a passion. It's fun.
Oh, it is. I just mean dealing with all the other people that are like,
oh yeah,
it's like this isn't what I agreed to, but I know it's part of it. So
yeah, it comes with the territory.
But yeah, so thank you, and thank you to everyone that tuned in and watched this show. And
thanks, man. I appreciate it, bro.
Yes, and with that, we are going to say have a great afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day and week, and we'll see you on the next one. Good night, everyone. Or good afternoon, everyone.
Hey, hey, I'm going to mute myself for a second. I really appreciate it, bro. I really do, man.
Yes. Thank you. And with that, we're going to try the outro.